My daughter called me at 3. 0 inches the morning, her voice so small I almost didn't recognize it. Dad, Dad, please, you have to come get me. Then a man's voice in the background, sharp and cold. A door slamming. The line went dead. I was already pulling on my jacket before my brain caught up with what my hands were doing. 63 years old, 2 bad knees, and I was moving faster than I had in a decade. As a parent, what would you do if your child called you from somewhere she wasn't allowed to leave? I need you to tell me in the comments. Because that night, I made a choice that changed everything. My name is Robert Harmon. I spent 31 years as a criminal defense lawyer in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I've sat across from some of the most dangerous people in this country and kept my voice steady. I've read police reports that would make a grown man sick and never flinched. My daughter Claire always said my calmness was my superpower. She also said it made me difficult to live with. She wasn't wrong about either. My wife Margaret died 4 years ago. Ovarian cancer, diagnosed in September, gone by February. The speed of it still doesn't feel real. Before she passed, she held my hand and said, "Robert, don't you dare let that girl go through life without someone watching her back." I promised her I would. I have never broken a promise to Margaret. Not once in 37 years of marriage. I wasn't about to start now. Claire was 31 when she met her husband at a fundraiser in downtown Halifax. His family owned a chain of long-term care facilities across Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. 5 properties, licensed and inspected, with a website full of smiling elderly residents in sunlit common rooms. His father, the kind of man who wore a blazer to a barbecue and talked about philanthropy while his staff worked 12-hour shifts for minimum wage. I noticed it the first time I met him. Claire told me I was projecting. She wasn't entirely wrong about that either. I'd spent 3 decades watching respectable people do terrible things behind respectable walls. It makes you suspicious of clean surfaces. But I backed off. I told myself that maybe my instincts had calcified into cynicism. Margaret would have told me to give people a chance. So I tried. The marriage was 2 years old when Claire stopped calling as often. Then the calls became shorter. Then I noticed she sounded careful, measured, like she was choosing every word before she said it. I asked her once, directly, "Are you all right?" She said yes. She said it too quickly. I filed it away and kept watching. The night she called was a Thursday in January. Halifax in January is dark and bitter, and the wind off the harbor goes right through you. I'd been awake reviewing documents for a former colleague who still occasionally asked for my opinion on complex cases. Retired but never quite retired. That's what Claire called it. Old habits. When her name lit up my phone at 3 in the morning, I felt it before I answered. That particular dread that parents carry in their chest like a stone, always there, heavier some days than others. Dad, please, you have to come get me. Claire, where are you? What's happening? I'm at the house. His father is here and I tried to leave and Dad, please, just come. Please don't call anyone yet. Just come, please. The line cut off. I grabbed my coat, my keys, the small recorder I'd kept charged out of professional habit for 30 years, and I drove. The drive to their property in Dartmouth normally took 25 minutes. I made it in 18. The house sat at the end of a private road, large and well-maintained, the kind of property that announced its own importance. Every light was on. My son-in-law's car was in the driveway alongside a second vehicle I didn't recognize. I parked on the street, not the driveway. Old courtroom instinct. Don't give them any advantage. I walked to the front door and knocked. Nothing. Knocked again, harder. The door opened 6 inches. My son-in-law stood in the gap. 35 years old, expensive haircut, the particular expression of someone who had decided in advance how this conversation would go. "Robert, it's 3 in the morning. I know what time it is," Claire called me. "I want to see her. She's upset. She had too much to drink. We're handling it. Step aside. She doesn't need you right now. She needs to sleep it off, and we can all talk tomorrow like adults." I heard something then. From somewhere upstairs, a sound I recognized from decades of interviewing traumatized witnesses, the specific quality of someone trying not to be heard crying. "That's my daughter. Move. Robert, I'm asking you to respect." I put my hand flat on the door and pushed. He stumbled back. I walked in. He grabbed my arm. I turned and looked at him the way I used to look at witnesses who were lying to me from the stand. He let go. "Where is she?" His father appeared from the hallway then. The father. 67 years old. Silver hair. The kind of physical presence built by decades of being the most important person in every room he entered. He was wearing a suit jacket at 3 in the morning. I noted that. "Robert." His voice was warm, practiced. "I understand you're concerned. That's completely natural. But Claire has been struggling lately. We've been working very hard to support her. Having you here right now, in this state, is only going to make things worse. What state am I in? You're upset. Understandably. I'm not upset. I'm a criminal defense lawyer who just drove 18 minutes because my daughter called me terrified. Tell me where she is, or I'll call Halifax Regional Police and let them come find her. Something moved behind his eyes. Not fear exactly. Calculation. She's not leaving tonight, he said. She's in no condition. Those words, the particular arrogance of them, she's not leaving, as if that were his decision to make. I walked past him toward the stairs. My son-in-law moved to block me. His father put a hand up, and his son went still. Interesting. The old man was still in control. You'll regret this, the father said behind me. I was already on the stairs. I followed the sound of crying to a room at the end of the hall. The door was locked from the outside with a sliding bolt, the kind you install when you want to keep someone in, not out. I threw the bolt and opened the door. Claire was sitting on the floor with her back against the bed, knees pulled up to her chest. She was wearing yesterday's clothes. Her face was swollen from crying and her hands were shaking badly enough that I could see it from the doorway. She looked up and the sound she made broke something in me that hasn't fully healed since. Dad. I crossed the room and got down on the floor beside her, both knees screaming at me, and I put my arms around her and held on. I've got you. I'm right here. They took my phone. I found it in the kitchen drawer when he went to answer the door. I didn't have much time. How long have you been in this room? Since yesterday afternoon. She was shaking harder now. He said I was having an episode. He said I needed to calm down before I hurt myself. Dad, I'm not losing my mind. I know that's what they've been saying. But I'm not. I know that. I know. I pulled back and looked at her face. Can you walk? Yes. Then we're leaving. We came down the stairs together, my arm around her. The father stood in the front hall, his son beside him. Neither moved. Claire needs to stay, the father said. She has an appointment tomorrow with her treatment team. If she leaves, I will be forced to contact her care providers and explain that she's left against medical advice. I stopped on the bottom stair. Her treatment team, I said. What treatment team? Claire has been receiving psychiatric support for the past 8 months. At our facility in Bedford. She's been struggling, Robert. We've been trying to protect her. Claire's hand gripped my arm. He's been taking me there every 2 weeks, she said very quietly. I thought it was just therapy. But the medication they give me there, Dad, it makes everything foggy. It makes me feel like I can't trust myself. I looked at the father. I had cross-examined some very sophisticated liars in my career. He was good, but I'd been doing this since before his son was born. We're leaving, I said. If you attempt to physically prevent us, I will call police and you will be arrested before sunrise. If you attempt to have my daughter detained through any medical channel on the basis of a psychiatric designation that I strongly suspect has been fabricated, I will dedicate every remaining hour of my professional life to ensuring that every facility you own is investigated until there is nothing left to investigate. Do we understand each other? His jaw tightened. He stepped aside. I got Claire to my car. I locked the doors, started the engine, and pulled out of that driveway without looking back in the mirror. It took everything I had. I drove Claire to the QEII Health Sciences Center in Halifax. The emergency department at 4 a.m. is a particular kind of quiet, fluorescent, and exhausted and deeply serious. A nurse with steady hands and a kind face took Claire through the doors. I sat in a plastic chair and did not move for 2 hours. The doc, Mr. Harmon, your daughter is stable. Physically, she's in reasonable condition, but we're concerned about her blood work. She has elevated levels of quetiapine and lorazepam. Both are prescription medications. Neither appears to have been prescribed to her by any physician she's identified as her own doctor. She's been attending sessions at a private facility in Bedford, the Merit Group. They've been administering medication there. The doctor wrote something down. We're required by law to report suspected medication misuse. I've already contacted RCMP as a precaution. Good, I said. I pulled out my phone and called my former articling student, now one of the better civil litigators in Halifax. I woke him up without apology. He owed me more than a few late nights. James, I said, I need you, tonight. He arrived at the hospital inside 40 minutes, hair still uncombed, coffee in hand. I told him everything while Claire rested. He took notes on his phone without interrupting. That was always his gift. The Merit Group, he said when I finished. I've heard things. Nothing I could verify. Former employees who left unhappy. Find them. Robert. They drugged my daughter and locked her in a room. James. Find them. He found 4 former employees within 48 hours. 2 agreed to speak on the record. What they described matched a pattern I recognized from cases I'd worked decades ago: systematic over-medication of residents to prevent complaints, falsified assessment records, payments to a physician who signed off on diagnoses without conducting proper evaluation. But this wasn't just one facility. James pulled the inspection records for all 5 Merrick Group properties. The gaps and inconsistencies told their own story. There are 42 deaths in the past 6 years across these facilities, James said, sitting across from me at my kitchen table at midnight. The provincial average for comparable facilities is significantly lower. I had a biostatistician look at the numbers. 42. I sat with that number for a long moment. How many families complained? 11 filed formal complaints. 9 of those were resolved through settlement agreements with non-disclosure clauses. 1 family went to the health authority. The complaint was closed after review. The reviewer's name appears in the Merrick Group's charitable donation records 6 weeks later. $20,000 to a foundation he chairs. I'd been a lawyer long enough to know that corruption rarely announces itself. It hides in the paperwork. It lives in the reasonable explanations. But pull enough threads, and eventually the whole fabric comes apart. I started calling families. Some didn't answer. Some answered and hung up when I explained why I was calling. But 3 families talked, and what they told me made those 42 deaths stop being a statistic. The first was a woman in Moncton. Her mother had been a resident at the Merrick facility in Sackville. She'd called her daughter one afternoon, coherent and distressed, saying the staff was giving her injections she hadn't consented to. She passed away 11 days later. The facility said it was cardiac failure. The family requested her medication records. They were told they were unavailable due to a filing error. The second was a man in Truro. His father had been healthy when he entered the Merrick facility in Truro for what was supposed to be short-term respite care after a hip replacement. He died within the first month. No explanation that satisfied anyone. The family hired a lawyer who took their money and settled quietly. The father signed nothing because the father was dead. The third was a sister in Fredericton. Her brother, 68 years old, had tried to leave the facility early after 3 weeks. He said the staff were watching him. He said he wasn't being allowed to use his phone freely. He became agitated. They put him in what they called a supportive care room for his own safety. He died there 48 hours later. Natural causes. He'd had a healthy heart his entire life. I sat in my study at 2. 0 inches the morning, surrounded by files and printed emails and photographs, and I thought about Margaret. I thought about what she would have said sitting across from me in the chair by the window where she used to grade her students' papers. She would have said, "You know what has to happen next." I did know. I'd always known, from the moment I walked into that house and heard my daughter crying through a locked door. The next morning I drove to the Halifax RCMP division and asked for the officer handling Claire's file. I was taken to a staff sergeant named Patricia Walsh, 40-something, short hair, the economical manner of someone who'd learned to spend words carefully. She closed the office door before I sat down. "Mr. Harmon, I've read the initial report from the hospital. I want to hear the rest." I told her everything, including what James had found, including the families. She asked precise questions and took precise notes, and when I finished she was quiet for a moment. The Merrick Group is federally funded in part through the Canada Health Transfer and through provincial long-term care funding. Fraudulent billing at that scale is a federal matter. I've been coordinating with a colleague at the RCMP Federal Serious and Organized Crime Unit for the past 18 months. She paused. "On an unrelated matter that is starting to look less unrelated. What do you need from me?" "Evidence of the pattern you've described in real time. The financial records you have are compelling, but they're historical. To make an arrest that sticks under federal jurisdiction, we need to catch them in an act." "What kind of act?" She met my eyes. "There's a woman, a former administrator at their Bedford facility. She left 14 months ago under difficult circumstances. She's been trying to find someone to listen for over a year. She's agreed to help us. But for them to act, they need to believe someone credible is about to expose them. Someone with access to evidence. Someone they'd want to silence." I understood what she wasn't saying. "My daughter is not doing this." "I understand. But Mr. Harmon..." The door opened. Claire walked in. She'd been in the waiting area. I hadn't told her to come. I hadn't told her not to. "I followed you," she said simply. "I heard enough in the hall." She looked at Walsh. "I want to help." "Absolutely not, Dad." Her voice was quiet, but it had edges in it. Margaret's edges. How many people died in those facilities? I didn't answer. 42, she said, James told me. 42 people. And their families got NDAs and silence and nothing else. She sat down. I'm not going to be another person who was handed a settlement and told to go home. You were drugged and locked in a room. I know what I went through. That's exactly why I'm the right person. She looked at Walsh. What do I have to do? Walsh explained it carefully. The former administrator, a woman named Sandra, would make contact with the Merrick Group's leadership, claiming to have documentation she'd removed when she left. They would want to retrieve it. They would want to ensure she couldn't testify. The moment they acted on that, RCMP and the Federal Serious and Organized Crime Unit would have what they needed for federal kidnapping and fraud charges across provincial lines. Claire's role was to be visibly present as the witness who could corroborate Sandra's account, the person they'd want most to neutralize. I sat in that office and felt every one of my 63 years. If anything happens to her, I said, it isn't worth it. Nothing will happen to her, Walsh said. We will have surveillance on every exit, tracking devices, a response team inside 4 minutes. 4 minutes is a very long time. I know. I drove home with Claire in the passenger seat, and neither of us spoke for most of the way. When I pulled into my driveway, she put her hand on my arm. Mum would have done this, she said. That's not fair. I know. But it's true. It was true. James ran logistics. Walsh assigned a shadow team. Sandra met Claire at a coffee shop on Barrington Street on a Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. I sat 4 blocks away in my car with my phone in my hand, watching the minutes pass like hours. At 7:22, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Harmon, the father's voice. Smooth as always. Your daughter has inserted herself into something she doesn't understand. Where is she? Still at the coffee shop, as far as I know. I'm calling you as a courtesy. There's still time for everyone to make sensible decisions. Whatever documents you believe you have, they're incomplete. They can be explained. Litigation is expensive and slow and hard on families. Is that a threat? It's a reality. He paused. Tell your daughter to go home. Tell her to let this go. Tell her what you've been through is unfortunate, and we are willing to acknowledge that privately, generously. I thought about the woman in Moncton, her mother calling from a phone they probably monitored, saying she hadn't consented. We'll be in touch, I said, and ended the call. My phone buzzed immediately. Walsh, they're moving. 2 vehicles following Sandra and Claire, heading north on the 102. We're behind them. David, stay on the route we discussed. Bring the documents. I drove. 90 minutes north of Halifax, the Merrick Group's flagship facility outside Truro sat on 8 acres of well-maintained land. I'd passed it before and thought nothing of it. Impressive stonework. Canadian flag at the entrance. Flower beds maintained through the autumn. The kind of place where you'd feel good about leaving someone you loved. I pulled up to the gate at 10:15 p.m. It opened without me pressing anything. They were expecting me. A security guard led me through the main lobby, warm lighting, watercolor prints of Nova Scotia coastlines, the smell of institutional cleaning product under something floral. We went through a door marked staff only, down a corridor with a lower ceiling and fluorescent lights, through a second door that locked behind us. The room held a long table, several chairs, and the father standing at the far end with 2 men I recognized from the property in Dartmouth. Claire and Sandra sat together against the wall, zip ties at their wrists. Claire looked at me when I came in. Her face was terrified and steady at the same time. Margaret's face, every bit. The father gestured to the table. The files, please. I set the laptop bag down. What happens now, I said, is you look at those files, you decide whether I've given you everything, and then you do whatever it is you intend to do. And you believe that I came here alone because that's the only way a frightened old man would act. He looked at the bag. You're not a frightened man. I'll give you that. No, I said. I'm not. Then his own voice came out of the ceiling speakers. Walsh had the audio feeds on loop before we'd entered the building. The security system had been turned against itself. His voice describing the management of difficult residents. His son's voice on a phone call discussing the woman in the Sackville facility. Evidence he had no idea Rebecca Sandra had gathered and preserved. He went completely still. What is that? He said. Not a question. That's 17 months of documentation, I said. It's been with federal prosecutors since this morning. The lights cut out, emergency lighting threw everything red. Then the sound I hadn't let myself believe would actually come. RCMP. Nobody move. Hands where we can see them. Walsh came through the door in tactical gear. 3 officers behind her. 2 more through a second entrance. The father didn't run. He stood very straight while they put cuffs on him, and I thought that was the most telling thing about him. He still believed his posture mattered. I crossed the room and got Claire's zip ties off with a folding knife Walsh had handed me at the car. Claire leaned into me for a moment without saying anything. I held on. I was so scared, she said very quietly. I know. You did it anyway. Walsh approached us while her officers secured the room. Mr. Harmon, your daughter's testimony, combined with Sandra's documentation, gives us federal kidnapping charges, fraud against the Crown, and a pattern of criminal negligence that the Crown Attorney is already calling the most significant long-term care case in Atlantic Canadian history. She paused. She saved lives tonight. So did you. Claire looked up. Really? Really? The trials took 16 months. The story broke nationally. Within the first week, the CBC covered it extensively, then the Globe and Mail, then it spread further. The Merrick Group's 5 facilities were placed under provincial administration, pending full audit. A federal inquiry into long-term care oversight was announced, the second such inquiry in 5 years, which told you everything about how well the first one had gone. I attended every day of the proceedings. I sat in that gallery and I watched. The father received 18 years for conspiracy. Criminal negligence causing death in connection with 7 confirmed cases, fraud against the Crown, and uttering threats. He was 67 years old. He would not see freedom again. I noted the moment the judge read it. His posture finally broke. My son-in-law received 11 years for assault, unlawful confinement, and conspiracy. He looked at Claire when the verdict was read. She didn't look back. 2 physicians who had signed fraudulent assessments received 6 and 4 years respectively, plus permanent revocation of their licenses. A provincial health authority official who had closed a complaint in exchange for a donation received 3 years and a lifetime ban from public office. The facility in Sackville, where the woman from Moncton's mother had been told her medication records were unavailable due to a filing error, had its records eventually recovered from a backup server. There were 14 cases in that facility alone requiring reinvestigation. A victims' compensation fund of $12 million was established through the asset seizure. 31 families came forward during the claims process. Every one of them received an acknowledgement that what happened to their person was not an accident, was not natural causes, was not a regrettable outcome. It was done to them by people who believed they could do it without consequence. I received a letter 3 months after sentencing. Prison mail. My son-in-law's handwriting on the return address. I opened it at my kitchen table with my coffee going cold beside me. It said that I had destroyed his family, that I had no idea what I had interfered with, that people on the outside were still watching, that when he was out, things would be different. I photographed the letter, front and back, and forwarded it to Walsh in the Crown Attorney's office. Then I put the original in my filing cabinet under M, where I keep everything that might someday be evidence. That evening Claire called. Dad. Someone reached out to our support group today. Her husband is in a private memory care facility outside Ottawa. She says things aren't right. She says she's tried reporting it and nobody listens. I pulled my notepad across the table, uncapped a pen, wrote the date at the top of a fresh page. Ottawa. Memory care. Nobody listens. Tell me everything she told you, I said. I am 63 years old. My knees remind me of that fact every morning. I get tired earlier than I did at 50, and the cold goes into my bones now, in a way it never used to. Margaret has been gone 4 years, and some mornings the kitchen feels very quiet. But I also spent 31 years learning exactly how people in positions of power hide what they do from people who trust them. I know where to pull. I know what the paperwork looks like when someone is trying to make something disappear. I know the difference between an explanation and a performance. And I made a promise to my wife. I don't break promises to Margaret. Not once in 37 years, and not now. Claire is safe. Claire is building something real from what was done to her, a peer support network for families, navigating long-term care complaints in Nova Scotia, which sounds modest until you understand that most of those families had nowhere to turn before she built it. Some mornings I watch her on a video call with 3 or 4 people I've never met, all of them finding language for something that happened to someone they loved, and I think, Margaret, you should see her. There are more people out there. More families who made the phone call and were told it was natural causes. More residents who are frightened and confused and have no one on the outside who knows what to look for. More paperwork designed to make the truth unreadable. So I keep going, not because I'm brave, because I made a promise, and because I've learned later than I should have. In a locked room in Dartmouth at 3. 0 inches the morning that protecting the people you love doesn't mean standing between them and the world. Sometimes it means standing beside them while they walk into it. When you see something wrong, when your gut tells you the clean surface is hiding something, when someone you love goes quiet in the particular way that means they're afraid, don't wait. Don't tell yourself you're projecting. Don't let someone in a good jacket convince you that your concern is the problem. Act. Now, while you still can. I'm still acting, and I'm not done.